They're not really gone, not fully, not as much as they pretend. They're quiet, distant, cold, but beneath that silence, they're waiting, not for peace, not for healing, but for your collapse. That's the game they're playing. They want to see if you'll break first, if you'll crack under pressure, if you'll blink in this silent standoff and give them what they crave most, proof that they still have power over you. But before we delve deeper, if you've ever felt that gut-deep pressure, if you've ever sat in silence wondering why they aren't reaching out, but somehow still watching you, press the like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because today, we're going to expose their quiet trap and give you the mindset to rise above it with strength they didn't expect. Now picture this, folks. Imagine a hunter, but this one doesn't chase. This one waits, hides, sets a trap, and then steps back, calm and confident, knowing the prey will eventually walk right into it. That's what they're doing. They're not reaching out, not because they're over you, but because they're betting on your weakness. They're hoping your thoughts will unravel, that your need for closure will do the work for them, that you'll break the silence, and once you do, they'll win. They'll win your energy, your attention, your control. Because when you move first, they get confirmation that they still affect you, that you're still emotionally orbiting around them. And let's be real, most people do break first. That's the sad truth. They fall into the trap, they react. They send that just checking in message, view that story, or post something vague to stir curiosity. Every one of those actions bleeds power. It tells the other person, you still occupy space in my mind. But here's where you break the cycle. Here's where you flip the script. As Epictetus said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. You're not here to dance to their rhythm. You're here to stand tall in your own. You don't need to reach out. You don't need to react, because your silence isn't emptiness, it's control, dominance, power. They thought you'd panic without their validation. They thought the absence would crush you, but you're not collapsing. You're getting clearer. You're not chasing, you're building. While they're wondering what you're thinking, you're evolving quietly and steadily. And that's the most terrifying thing to someone who expected you to beg. Let me tell you something, my friends. Silence in the hands of someone who knows their worth is not passivity. It's war strategy. That's you becoming the unknown, the unreadable, the unshakable. The silence that once made you feel powerless now makes you untouchable. They're waiting for a crack, for a message, for some sign that the sun still shines in your sky. But here's what's really happening. You've stopped orbiting. You've stopped looking for light from a place that only gave you shadows. And now they are the ones feeling the chill. So don't fall for it. Don't move first. Don't explain your silence. Don't justify your calm. You owe them nothing, not your reaction, not your energy, and definitely not your peace. If this resonates with you, pause, breathe, own it, and then type this in the comments to make it real. I choose calm. Say it with conviction. Write it down to lock it in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world. And if you're walking this journey with me, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what's coming next is where you flip the whole game. Number 1, your reaction is the real prize. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. They don't want you back. They want your reaction, your attention, your surrender. This silence, this gap between you, isn't just distance. It's a test. Whether you realize it or not, you are the experiment. They're watching to see how long you'll last, how deep your resolve runs, how fast your emotions will cave under pressure. They're not reaching out because they're over it. They're staying quiet because they're hoping you won't be able to endure. They're waiting for your pride to falter, your discipline to erode, your emotions to crack just enough for a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" to slip out. Because in their mind, your reaction equals their victory. And folks, that's the trap. The silence isn't neutral. It's a weapon they use to study you, to measure you, to provoke you without saying a word. Imagine a chessboard where one side isn't moving. They just sit there, staring across the board, letting the silence do the talking. That's unnerving, right? You start second-guessing your strategy. You question whether your move was right. You overthink and eventually act impulsively, just to regain a sense of control. That's what they're hoping for, that your anxiety, your overthinking, your need for certainty will drive you to make the first move, handing them power on a silver platter. Maybe you've felt it, that pull, that temptation to respond to their passive-aggressive posts, that desire to show them you're unaffected by posting something subtle. Perhaps you've drafted the message but didn't send it. Maybe you did send it and now regret it, asking yourself why they seem fine while you're left wondering what just happened. Here's why. You forgot what the real game was. You thought the breakup or the argument was the peak of the conflict, but it wasn't. That was just the beginning. This silence, this reaction, this tension, that's the real battleground. They don't need to say a word if your emotions are still screaming. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your calm, your stillness, your refusal to react, that's your greatest move. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're in control of the only thing that matters, yourself. But let's be honest, it's not easy. You've been conditioned to believe that silence equals loss, that not speaking means giving up, that if you don't explain, don't check in, don't respond, you'll lose your chance forever. That's the lie they hope you'll believe. Because if you believe that, you'll break the silence, you'll panic, you'll move first. And once you do, the power dynamic flips again. But what if you didn't? What if instead of chasing clarity, you chose composure? What if instead of reacting, you just watched? What if you became the person they couldn't read, predict, or manipulate? That would shake them more than any message you could send. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment they lose control of the story. So let them wonder, let them scroll, let them reread your last message and sit in the echo of your silence. You're not cold, you're in control. You're not being petty, you're being powerful. When you realize that your reaction is what they want the most, you stop giving it away so easily. This is your time to stand still in the storm and feel nothing but focus, to feel the itch to respond and resist it. That's real power. That's the moment you rise. That's when they realize you're not the same anymore. Say it with me, folks. I respond with strength. Type it in the comments. Lock it in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence isn't fear, it's force. And don't go anywhere, because next we're going deeper into the little tricks they use to bait you back in and how to see them coming before they even make a move. Stay with me. Number 2, your reaction is the real prize. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. They don't want you back. They want your reaction, your attention, your surrender. This silence, this gap between you, it's not just distance, it's a test. Whether you realize it or not, you are the experiment. They're watching to see how long you'll last, how deep your resolve runs, how fast your emotions will cave under pressure. They're not reaching out because they're over it. They're staying quiet because they're hoping you won't be able to. They're waiting for your pride to falter, your discipline to erode, your emotions to crack just enough for a, "Hey, how have you been?" to slip out. Because in their mind, your reaction equals their victory. And folks, that's the trap. The silence isn't neutral. It's a weapon they're using to study you, to measure you, to provoke you without saying a word. Imagine a chessboard, but one side isn't moving. They just sit there staring across the board, letting the silence do the talking. That's unnerving, right? You start second-guessing your strategy. You question whether your move was right. You overthink and eventually act impulsively just to feel in control again. That's what they're hoping for, that your anxiety, your overthinking, your need for certainty will drive you to make the first move, handing them power on a silver platter. Maybe you've felt it, that pull, that temptation to respond to their passive-aggressive posts, that desire to show them you're unaffected by posting something subtle. Perhaps you've drafted the message but didn't send it. Maybe you did send it and now regret it, asking yourself why they seem fine while you're left wondering what just happened. Here's why. You forgot what the real game was. You thought the breakup or the argument was the peak of the conflict, but it wasn't. That was just the beginning. This silence, this reaction, this tension, that's the real battleground. They don't need to say a word if your emotions are still screaming. As Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your calm, your stillness, your refusal to react, that's your greatest move. Because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means you're in control of the only thing that matters, yourself. But let's be honest, it's not easy. You've been conditioned to believe that silence equals loss, that not speaking means giving up, that if you don't explain, don't check in, don't respond, you'll lose your chance forever. That's the lie they hope you'll believe. Because if you believe that, you'll break the silence, you'll panic, you'll move first. And once you do, the power dynamic flips again. But what if you didn't? What if instead of chasing clarity, you chose composure? What if instead of reacting, you just watched? What if you became the person they couldn't read, predict, or manipulate? That would shake them more than any message you could send. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment they lose control of the story. So, let them wonder. Let them scroll. Let them reread your last message and sit in the echo of your silence. You're not cold, you're in control. You're not being petty, you're being powerful. When you realize that your reaction is what they want the most, you stop giving it away so easily. This is your time to stand still in the storm and feel nothing but focus, to feel the itch to respond and resist it. That's real power. That's the moment you rise. That's when they realize you're not the same anymore. Say it with me, folks. I respond with strength. Type it in the comments. Lock it in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence isn't fear, it's force. And don't go anywhere, because next we're going deeper into the little tricks they use to bait you back in and how to see them coming before they even make a move. Stay with me. Number 3, the trap is set with breadcrumbs. People will show you what they want you to see. The question is, do you take the bait or do you see the setup? They won't always say it out loud. They won't beg. They won't even ask you to come back. Instead, they'll leave clues, little crumbs on the trail, a song lyric posted just a little too soon, a blurry photo that might be with someone new, a quote that sounds suspiciously like something you said. Folks, this isn't coincidence. This is bait. This is the trap. They don't want to reach out directly because that would cost them power. So they do what manipulators do best. They plant seeds and wait. That's the game. Subtle, quiet, strategic. They want you to see it, to notice it, to overthink it. And once you do, you're right where they want you, inside your head, wondering. It starts small. Maybe they view your story after weeks of silence. Maybe they post something cryptic like, "Funny how people change," knowing full well you'll read into it. Maybe they like an old post, send a friend request, or play your favorite song in their background story. It's not random, it's rehearsed. It's emotional chess. Why? Because if they can get you to react, they win. Not because they want to fix things, not because they miss you, but because it proves you're still thinking about them, that you're still emotionally tied to their presence, that they still matter enough to make you pause your peace. And maybe right now you're wondering, but what if it isn't a trap? What if they're trying to reconnect and just don't know how? That's the hook. That maybe they miss you too, that they're testing the waters before diving in. But my friends, true reconnection isn't cryptic, it's clear. It doesn't hide behind passive-aggressive quotes and thirst traps. It picks up the phone, takes ownership, and says, "Let's talk." If you have to decode it, it's not real. It's a game. Think of it like this. You're in a maze, and every breadcrumb is a dead end pretending to be a path. You chase one, then another, thinking they lead to resolution, to clarity, to closure. But all they do is lead you in circles while they stand in the center, watching, amused. You're not in a conversation. You're in a loop, and they designed it. So what do? You stop chasing breadcrumbs. You stop reading into shadows. You stop giving energy to things that were designed to drain you, because your attention is currency. And when you spend it on these mind games, you rob yourself of peace. Seneca once said, "If you know not to what port you sail, no wind is favorable." Translation: if you don't know your destination, every breadcrumb feels like direction. But once you know your purpose, your peace, your path, those little traps lose their power. They want you confused. They want you watching. They want you wondering if that post was meant for you. If you're not careful, that wondering turns into hoping, and that hoping pulls you right back into the same emotional chaos you were trying to escape. But not this time. This time, you see the setup. This time, you don't move. You don't text. You don't post in response. You let their bait hit the floor. You let their traps rust from neglect. You starve the pattern. Let them breadcrumb. Let them toss signals into the air. Let them wonder why you didn't react, why you didn't jump, why the move they thought would work didn't. That silence on your end echoes louder than any message you could send, because it says this: you're not baiting me anymore. You're not leading this dance. I've left the maze. I'm building something real now. So when you see those subtle signals next time, remember they're not bridges. They're snares. You don't need to follow them. You need to outgrow them, because you're not here to chase. You're here to choose. And this time, you choose yourself. Say it with me right now. I see through the bait. Type it in the comments. Lock it in. Show them you're not falling for it anymore. Show yourself that you've evolved. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're diving into something even deeper. Why your silence drives their ego crazy, and how you can use it to rebuild your entire identity. Let's go. Number 4, they feed off your anxiety. Starve it. Nothing gives one person so much advantage over another as remaining cool and unruffled under all circumstances. They don't need you to scream. They don't need you to cry. They don't need you to send a dramatic message or write a 3-paragraph confession about how you feel. No, they just need one small thing from you. Your anxiety, that subtle twitch in your behavior, that emotionally charged just checking in text, that late-night story you post with just the right song, that slightly too long online presence hoping they'll notice. Because folks, they don't just feed off drama, they feast on your restlessness. When they sense that you're uneasy, unsettled, uncertain, that's when they know they still own a piece of you. That's when the trap starts working, not because they said anything, but because you did. Because you moved first. Because you broke your silence, not from power, but from panic. This is what they're counting on. Not your anger, not your rage, but your unease. They want to see you get nervous in the quiet. They want to watch you unravel under your own imagination. And if you don't understand what's happening, you'll walk right into it thinking you're being honest or transparent, when in reality, you're just playing the game they laid out for you. Let me ask you something. Why do you want to reach out? Be real. Is it because you truly have something meaningful to say? Or because the silence is messing with your head? Are you trying to reconnect, or are you just trying to stop the emotional noise, that mental loop that keeps replaying? What if they don't care? What if you never hear from them again? What if you're making a mistake? That's not clarity, that's fear. That's anxiety wearing a disguise, and they know it. They feel it. That shaky post, that late reply, that accidental story view. Those are not strategies, they're insecurities bleeding through the cracks. They don't have to be in your life to be in your mind. And the more you act from that space of uncertainty, the more you reinforce their grip on your emotions. But what if you did the opposite? What if you didn't try to calm your anxiety with action? What if you sat with it and didn't move? What if you refused to let their silence dictate your peace? What if you let that tension burn without needing to release it through a message or a story? That's power. That's what most never do. And that's exactly why most stay stuck in the cycle, because they treat silence like a problem to solve instead of a space to grow. Seneca said it best: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. What does that mean here? It means you're not hurting because of what's actually happening. You're hurting because of what you think might be happening. You're replaying scenarios, inventing conclusions, creating chaos in a mind that was built for peace. That's the danger. That's the trap. And that's how they win without ever lifting a finger. But not you. Not this time. This time you recognize the lie that your anxiety is a signal to act. It's not. It's a signal to pause, to get still, to look inward. Because true growth doesn't come from reacting. It comes from resisting the reaction. It comes from knowing that even though your thoughts are loud, you don't have to obey them. And here's what happens when you start to starve that need for validation. They notice. Oh, they notice. The energy shifts. The messages stop. The stories go silent. You vanish. Not to hide, but to heal. And that calm you're building starts to scream louder than anything you could have said. They wonder why you're not reaching out, why you're not giving them something to chew on, why their bait isn't working anymore. That silence you've been sitting in becomes your armor. That calm you've been forcing becomes your power. That decision to hold back becomes your evolution. So the next time you feel the pull to post something for their eyes, pause. The next time you want to break the silence just to feel something, wait, because that's your moment, that's your test. And when you pass it, you grow. Say it. With me, I choose calm over chaos. Type it in the comments. Make it real. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your anxiety no longer owns you. And stay with me, because what we're about to get into next is where your silence becomes not just strength, but strategy. Number 5, silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. The strong man is strongest when alone. They think your silence means you're hurting, that you're lost, that you're sitting there staring at your screen just waiting for the right moment to reach out. And truthfully, that's how they expect you to play this. They expect you to panic in the pause, to interpret your own silence as failure. But my friends, they couldn't be more wrong. Silence, true grounded silence, isn't passive. It isn't giving up. It's not surrender, it's strategy. It's a conscious decision to say nothing while you rebuild everything. It's not the retreat of someone broken, it's the stillness of someone becoming dangerous. See, the world has trained you to believe that action is strength, that the one who texts first is brave, that the one who reaches out is mature, that being silent means you've given up. But that's a lie, a loud one. And too many people fall for it. They rush to speak, to explain, to defend, to be heard. Not because they're sure of themselves, but because they're terrified of what happens when they're not seen. But that's where your growth begins, in the silence. in the decision not to perform, in the refusal to dance for someone else's validation. Because silence forces you to sit with your thoughts, to separate what's true from what's emotional noise. It's where you find the parts of yourself that don't need approval, that don't crave a reaction, that don't break just because someone else decided to disappear. Imagine a lion in the wild. It doesn't roar every 5 seconds to prove it's powerful. It doesn't chase every creature that walks by. It sits, it watches, it waits. And that silence, that stillness, that's not weakness, it's control, it's presence, it's dominance without desperation. They expect you to explain your silence, to justify it, to break it eventually with some vague check-in or soft attempt at reconnection. That's the script. That's what most people do. But you're not most people anymore. You're learning to hold the line, to sit in the fire without reaching for water, to let the silence stretch out and own it. When they notice you haven't budged, they start asking questions in their own minds. Why haven't they said anything? Do they not care anymore? Are they done for real? They start overthinking the way you used to. That's the shift. That's the point where silence becomes power. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're done playing theirs. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you always own the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. That's Stoicism at its core. Your silence isn't avoidance, it's alignment. It's you choosing what deserves your energy, your peace, your voice. And 9 times out of 10, it's not them. The truth is, anyone can send a message. Anyone can speak. But it takes discipline to be still. It takes real strength to remain quiet. Not because you're afraid, but because you don't need to prove anything. That kind of composure is rare, powerful, and unforgettable. But it's not easy, is it? Especially when your heart wants closure, when your ego wants revenge, when your emotions scream, say something. That's when the test is the loudest. That's when your silence means the most. Because if you can hold it when every cell in your body wants to reach out, you win, you evolve, you transcend. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them guess. Let them assume. Your job isn't to be seen, it's to become. And right now, in this silence, you're becoming the version of yourself that doesn't beg, that doesn't chase, that doesn't need to be validated to feel powerful. Say it with me. My silence is strategy. Type it in the comments. Lock it in. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means focused. And stay with me, because in the next part, we'll dive into the mind games they play when they realize you're not folding, and how to stay 10 steps ahead without saying a word. Number 6. Their game relies on your need for closure. The truth doesn't always come with answers. It often comes with acceptance. Let's break one of the biggest lies that keeps people stuck. The lie that you need closure to move on. That you need them to give you a reason to explain why they disappeared, why they changed, or why they treated you like you never mattered. Here's the brutal truth, my friends. They're not staying silent because they're confused. They're not giving you breadcrumbs because they don't know how to speak. They're doing it because they know you still want answers, and your desire for closure, that's the bait. They don't need to reach out when they know you're still trying to figure it out. They don't have to chase you when they know you're stuck in your head, replaying everything, trying to decode silence into meaning. They've seen it before, maybe they've even done it before. Stay quiet long enough, and the other person starts talking to themselves, filling in the blanks, making excuses, taking responsibility for things they didn't do. You start thinking, maybe I should have been more understanding. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe it was all me. And while you're caught in that emotional spin cycle, they're just watching, cool, calm, in control, because they know something you haven't fully accepted yet. Closure is an illusion. It's not something they give you. It's something you build within yourself. Let's get real. If they cared about giving you peace, they would have done it already. People who respect you don't leave you hanging. They don't ignore your pain. They don't vanish and come back like nothing happened. So why are you still waiting for an apology from someone who wasn't brave enough to be honest? You're not really chasing closure. You're chasing relevance. You're chasing proof that you mattered. You want them to say it meant something, that it wasn't all a lie, that the way they left doesn't reflect your worth. But here's what they don't want you to realize. You never needed their permission to let go. You never needed them to say, you were good enough. You are, whether they admit it or not. Imagine trying to close a door, but every time you reach for the handle, they yank it open a crack, just enough to keep you curious, just enough to keep you wondering. That's how they maintain control, not by holding you close, but by never truly letting you go either. But you can break that pattern, not by getting an answer, but by realizing you no longer need one. When you stop needing closure from them, you close the door yourself. You stop asking questions that only lead to more confusion. You stop giving them the satisfaction of knowing you're still emotionally invested in a version of them that no longer exists. As Epictetus once said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. That includes their explanations, their guilt, their regret, and their perspective. Let them keep it. You've got better things to carry. You don't need them to explain why they left. You need to understand why you kept waiting for someone who made you feel small. You don't need their words. You need your own boundaries. You don't need to hear you were amazing from someone who treated you like you were disposable. That's not closure. That's emotional breadcrumbing dressed up as honesty, and you've outgrown it. It's time to close the chapter without the final paragraph, to walk away with questions unanswered but dignity intact. That's the real power move. That's the silence that cuts deeper than any explanation ever could. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you finally realize that you were never supposed to beg for peace. So take a breath. Let go of the need to know. Let go of the fantasy that they'll one day tell the truth and say this with me. I close the door. Write it in the comments if you're done waiting for clarity that never comes. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your healing no longer depends on someone who couldn't even handle your honesty. And stay with me, because next we go even deeper into how your silence doesn't just end their game. It starts your transformation. Number 7, the strongest move is no move. In a world addicted to reaction, silence is the ultimate rebellion. They don't expect you to stay calm. They expect a reaction. That's what their silence is banking on. That at some point your mind will spiral, that the pressure will build until it cracks, that you'll finally give in. Not because you want to reconnect, but because you just want the silence to stop echoing in your chest. But what if you didn't move? What if, while they're waiting for a text, a slip-up, or a subtle sign that you still care, you gave them nothing? No anger, no jealousy, no "I miss you" energy cloaked in sarcasm. Nothing but peace. See, most people break the silence not because they're weak, but because they're uncomfortable with stillness. Stillness feels like failure in a world that teaches us to chase closure, chase validation, chase answers. We're conditioned to believe that the one who speaks first is strong, that taking action is always the high ground. But that's a lie wrapped in a motivational quote. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all. Picture this. A storm is raging, winds tearing through everything, debris flying everywhere. But in the middle of it all is a mountain, still unmoved. That's who you're becoming. While they throw emotional chaos your way, mixed signals, silence, confusion, you don't flinch, you don't chase, you don't react, you remain. That shakes them more than any angry message ever could, because they're expecting you to prove you still care. They're expecting you to fold, to break the silence with a casual, "Hey, just wondering how you're doing." But when you don't, when you hold your ground, the game starts to flip. They begin asking themselves, why haven't they reached out? Did I lose my grip on them? Are they really okay without me? And those questions hit hard because they were sure you needed them more, that your silence would crumble before theirs. But here's what they never considered. You're no longer driven by impulse. You're not acting from a place of desperation. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply being still, and that stillness has weight. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." That's Stoic power. That's what makes your silence unbearable for them. Not because it's rooted in pain, but because it's rooted in strength. Now let's be honest. Holding that silence isn't easy. There will be days when your thoughts scream louder than their silence. Nights when you stare at your phone, convincing yourself that one message won't hurt. Mornings when you check their profile and wonder if they've moved on. But those moments are tests, not for them, but for you. Tests of how much you value your peace over your impulse, your growth over their attention. When you refuse to break the silence out of loneliness, you prove something powerful to yourself. You don't need them to be okay. You don't need their response to validate your worth. You found something more important than attention, your center. And here's the part that flips everything. Your stillness forces them to reflect. It's a mirror, a sharp one. While they hoped you'd break, your silence now exposes their behavior. They thought you'd come crawling back, and instead, you disappeared with dignity. That stings, that lingers, that haunts. So don't send that text. Don't post that cryptic story. Don't fall for that urge to just check in. Let them wonder. Let the silence speak for you. Because in a world that can't stop talking, the one who says nothing has all the power. Say it with me. I move with purpose. Type it in the comments. Let it echo beyond the silence. Show them you're not frozen, you're focused. You're not avoiding, you're evolving. And stay with me, because what's coming next is how to rebuild your world without ever needing them to return to it. Number 8, rebuild your frame, not their image. You can't heal in the same place you were broken, and you can't grow while orbiting around someone who made you feel small. They're expecting you to be stuck, spinning in circles, replaying memories, clinging to what used to be. They think their silence still chains you to the past, that you're out there scrolling through old messages, hoping for a sign, stuck in that same emotional loop where you redefine your worth based on how they once saw you. But that ends now because you've spent enough time rebuilding their image. You've polished the past, painted over the red flags, and romanticized what wasn't even real. You've told yourself they were just confused, going through something, or didn't mean it like that. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. You weren't remembering them. You were rebuilding a version of them that never existed, a version where they were kind, consistent, and caring, when in reality, their silence, their avoidance, their breadcrumbs told you everything you needed to know. You can't heal by putting a crown on the person who dropped it and walked away. You can't rise while you keep shrinking yourself to fit the narrative of someone who only valued you when you were easy to control. That version of them you keep defending is not the one who left. That's the lie, and it's time to break it. So stop rebuilding them. Rebuild you, not out of spite, not to show them what they lost, but because you finally remembered who you are, the version of you that didn't need validation, that didn't break in silence, that didn't chase people who treated your presence like an option. That's who you're returning to. Rebuilding your frame means putting yourself back at the center of your life. Not them, not the idea of us, but you, your purpose, your path, your power. Because let's be real, While they were waiting for you to break, you forgot that you were the one who held it all together. You were the consistent one, the loyal one, the one who gave effort even when they gave silence. And now it's your time to give all of that to yourself. This is where the real glow-up begins, not with a gym membership or a filtered selfie, but with alignment. It starts with waking up and asking, "What do I want?" instead of, "What would impress them?" It starts with detaching your progress from their opinion. It starts with building habits that serve you, not ones designed to provoke a reaction. It starts with remembering that you don't need to be watched to be valuable. Because here's the truth. When you stop performing for their attention and start evolving in private, everything changes. You stop seeking approval. You stop trying to be enough, and you realize you always were. You just needed to stop asking the wrong audience to clap for you. As Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's rebuilding your frame. It's not a performance, it's a practice. It's showing up for yourself when no one's watching. It's setting standards not out of pride, but out of respect for your peace. It's being able to look in the mirror and say, I am no longer who they left. I am who I've chosen to become. And yes, it's going to hurt sometimes. Growth always does. Letting go of someone you once saw as your future feels like grieving a death. But what's being buried isn't just them. It's the illusion, the fantasy, the false hope. And in its place, something real, something unshakable. You. So start today, brick by brick, boundary by boundary. Stop rewriting old memories and start rewriting your standards. You don't need to fix the past. You need to fortify your future. That's the real flex, not the comeback they'll see, but the peace they'll never have access to again. And here's the final truth, my friends. This was never about who reaches out first. It was about who rises first. Your silence, your stillness, your strength. They've already shifted the power. So if this message spoke to you, like it, share it, and subscribe for more content that keeps you grounded.